What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Hopefully, everyone enjoyed the Harbaugh Bowl. Chalk another one up for John Harbaugh. Don't sleep on a man named John, who is, I guess he's the younger brother, uh, older brother. I think Jim's the older brother. But the Baltimore Ravens get a big win, go to 8-4, have a big game coming up this weekend with the Philadelphia Eagles. So props to the Ravens. We will dive into that. Lamar, Derrick Henry were fantastic. Their defense, which has been questioned, and rightfully so, definitely came to play against, I wouldn't say the most potent offense. We'll dive into the Chargers, who I think there's two ways to look at it. One, they're going to win 10-plus games after winning 5. It's a fantastic season, and who knows, like, depending on the matchup, they can win a playoff game. But big picture, they got some needs to take the next step over the next couple years if they want to go toe-to-toe with the Ravens, the Bills, and the Chiefs, obviously. Then a couple other NFL things going on. Mike Tannenbaum, the former Jets general manager, is back involved with the Jets. Some thoughts on the Bears. Something on the Commanders that I don't think we touched on yesterday, that some people we were talking about on text chains and stuff that I did want to hit on about going for 2 in that game. Dan Quinn had some comments on it today. And then, as we do on every Monday night, the Outhouse, which, I think there's might just be 1 or 2 teams that are really, really bad. The port-a-potty Panthers have left the Outhouse. The port-a-potty Panthers are playing good football. We have about a month now. We have multiple wins, a bye, and then toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. That is, 28 plus days of just holding your head high and doing well. So props to the Panthers. The Giants now, and you could argue in the Penthouse, the NFC is running this thing right now. But we will dive into some football very, very shortly. If you want, it's pretty crazy that SoFi, it didn't hit me right away. It's like, wait, they just played a game there last night. And then obviously on the broadcast, they talked about flipping the field, flipping all the cameras. Props to all those guys on the grind. But that place is a fun place to watch an event, watch a game, watch a concert. Pretty sure we got the World Cup coming right around the corner. Pretty sure they're playing it there too. Kroenke kind of battled whether he would like change some stuff, but I'm pretty sure that he did. So if you want to go to any event, whether it's sporting event, college or pro, I mean, college basketball is off and running. Obviously, football, we're coming down the home stretch. The NFL, NBA, NHL, concerts, Taylor Swift, you name it. Go see. I was down a rabbit hole on Saturday night, and I realized, I remember when I was young, my parents went to see the Eagles in the mid-90s, and I was down this rabbit hole. I was like, the crazy part about the Eagles? Every guy, and they had a lot of different guys in the band over the course of the 70s, can really sing, like carry a song. And it's one of those things. They're touring now. Obviously, they've lost some members, like Vince Gill's filling in. Actually played golf with a guy that went, and he said that it was awesome in Vegas. But I would actually really like to go see that show. It's not quite the same, but if you ever want to go to a concert, want to see a band, you never know. Like, you see Metallica, you see whoever you like. Obviously, there are some bands like the Rolling Stones that are still holding on for dear life. And you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Before we just dive into the game, because for 3 quarters, that thing was intense. It was 17-16 going into the 4th quarter. I'm like, there's a lot on the line here. And then the Ravens separated, kind of kicked their ass in the 4th quarter, and got, the final score will look a little different than what we witnessed in the 4th quarter with the late touchdown for the Chargers. But, we haven't got this game in a long time because Jim has been coaching in college football. It's pretty cool. I mean, it really is. Obviously, we see it with players, Peyton and Eli, the Watt brothers, uh, Steph Curry and his brother Seth. You've seen it in a lot of different sports with two brothers being on the same field. But for two brothers in Jim and John who were born into a family where their father was a football coach, and then for both to go on to not just become football coaches, because that isn't that weird. A lot of guys that coach do it because their dads did it, right? Brian Callahan, his dad's a coach. Kellen Moore, his dad's a coach. Even if you're not a coach at an NFL level, a college level, a high school level, it gets in your blood. It's what you want to do. But for both those guys to become, I don't know, two of the better coaches of their generation. Obviously, John is a Super Bowl champion. Last year, he had what I thought was the best team in the NFL poised to win the Super Bowl, for a second. Obviously, Jim has been to a Super Bowl, finally got over the hump and win a national title. It's just really, really cool. And, you see the love and the passion both these guys have for football. And I remember when I was working with the Eagles and I was in the box and Jim and John both came in. Obviously, John had worked, for Andy Reid, in the mid 2000s. The story about, and listen, like Jim was a very, very famous NFL football player. John was a college football player that no one had ever heard of, who was just called Jim Harbaugh's younger brother, kind of had to earn it from the mud. And then you read about Jim's story or hear about Jim's story or watch some of these things on Jim's story. He started coaching for his dad in the mid 90s when he was playing for the Bears, helping him recruit. So the passion they have for their family, how tight knit they are, it's just, I'm glad we have them in our life. I got the chance to see Jim Harbaugh firsthand for several years when he was coaching for the 49ers. I obviously this year his team is somewhat limited, though going to the playoffs, and we'll see who they play. They might have a chance to, win a game. If the Ravens can be healthy, they are obviously a Super Bowl contender. Uh, these two guys are just badasses, and Jack Harbaugh and Jackie Harbaugh deserve a lot of credit for just raising two hell of football coaches. Because I mean, they're coaching at the highest level. They are so successful and obviously their love for each other, but their love for their teams, their passion for the sport. It's like you can't hide what they bring to the table. Now on the game, one thing both these two guys, their teams that represent consistently running the football and playing defense. And that always translates in January. Why? Because you play in a lot of bad weather games. So if you can play defense and run the ball, even if your team is not as good as your opponent, you have a chance to win in the NFL playoffs. And we'll see in college football, it's the same thing. This is not basketball or baseball where it's like, we just don't have the talent. And over the course of a 7-game series, I'm going to be at a disadvantage. In tennis, it's several sets. In golf, it's 4 rounds. In football, it's 60 minutes. And if you can slow down the game and you can open field tackle and you can pressure the quarterback, you can win big time games. And the one thing you saw tonight, and I think the Ravens, tonight was one of their more impressive games of the year. Obviously, they have had sexier games with Lamar, the couple against the Cincinnati Bengals. He is going to have games, even the rest of this season, where the statistics are going to look better. But this was a game against one of the better defenses in the NFL, could not turn the ball over. You had to be extremely accurate and completely, I would say, under control and poised, which he often is against random teams, and he destroys. And we've noted against some of the better defenses over the last couple of years, it hasn't gone as well. And I thought tonight was the type game. Now, it was indoors. He was in complete control, and I thought he was excellent. I mean, the touchdown pass that he had to Bateman was an absolute dime. The touchdown pass in the back of the end zone to Andrews was just extremely high level NFL football. He did not put the ball in harm's way. He obviously had the rushing touchdown as well as, Derrick Henry dominated on the ground. And offensively, and here's the thing, like their defense has been a major question mark. And I don't think we learned that much against this opponent. We will learn more this upcoming week when they play the Eagles that have much more firepower, right? But if their defense can just be solid, it all comes down to Lamar in the offense. Because if they are good, Belichick, I was at the gym today, and Belichick came on Pat McAfee, and they were talking about this game. And he's like, the crazy thing about Baltimore, they're probably the only team in the NFL that when they are right, and maybe you could throw the Lions in here as well, but he mentioned, maybe he was just talking about the AFC. They could beat every team they play by 14 plus points, and no one would be surprised. And tonight, that's kind of essentially what they did, is they started separating in the second half or in the fourth quarter because of the quarterback, because he's such an unstoppable scramble thrower, offensive weapon. And then you saw Derrick Henry in the open field. This Chargers defense is really, really good. They're physical. They tackle well in the open field. And they look like me trying to tackle the guy because he is just throwing guys to the ground that have him just one-on-one in the open field. And you can see it from your couch. You're like, that guy's got no shot. And he just wore him down. Getting some holiday shopping done this weekend? Pick up some touchdowns. They're on sale at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. What else would you expect from the number one place to bet touchdowns? DraftKings has a doorbuster, profit boost, and bet one, get one promotions on all type of touchdown bets. Be sure to check the DraftKings Sportsbook app all weekend for flash deals that will have you dancing in the end zone. Grab some TDs with DraftKings Sportsbook. They're on sale from Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code JOHN to opt in. That's code JOHN only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. And I think you saw tonight, like, the Chargers do not have enough offense to beat, to me, teams like the Ravens and the Bills. They're just too explosive on offense and can score too many points. If the Chargers are going to beat a really good team, they actually probably have to win the game like, 19-16, 22-18, just a low scoring affair. Honestly, they match up the best of all the good teams against the Chiefs because they can play in just an ugly, muck it up game. Now, we will see what happened to J.K. Dobbins, but it's just hard over the course of 60 minutes to just hold this Ravens team because the offense is so explosive with the quarterback. And once that guy gets moving, man, he is just, I just don't think we're ever going to see anything like him again, which is ironic because the best running back prospect in the draft, who is completely dominating a lot like Derrick Henry did in college at Boise State, Ashton Genty. Word on the street, he's like shade over 5'7". He's actually tiny, right? But like they all come in different shapes and sizes, and Genty breaks tackles left and right. This guy, when he's one-on-one with these defenders, linebackers, and DBs, you're like, he is so much bigger, and he's going to toss him to the ground. And he just does it so violently. Where Lamar has the stiff arm that's like the back pedal, push your head down while I keep my eyes up. Tonight was, this is the thing about Lamar. Like, everyone gets on their knees and circle jerks these huge stat games against random teams. To me, tonight was a type game where it's like, that's a high-level performance. That's like playoff level, championship level type shit. If you play like that in January, the Ravens can beat anybody. And that guy that we just saw, like, I don't care what he does to the bad teams. I liked watching him against the best defenses and play like this. And clearly, as the game went, he got more and more comfortable. And that throw to Mark Andrews was just like, he was on. He was on. Now, his stats, like I said, are not going to be comparable to some of the games this year. I don't care. That's as good as it gets tonight from Lamar Jackson. Obviously, Derrick Henry having him. Isn't it crazy that I was thinking about it when Derrick was busting off some of his big runs? It was like, what are you even supposed to do? Meanwhile, Harbaugh's handed it to like J.K. Dobbins, good player, who gets injured, and then Gus Edwards, two guys that, over the course, essentially Derrick's replacing. Like that was a Ravens backfield once upon a time. Too little, bruising, good players, but not this Hall of Fame level guy. Is for Saquon, who got a lot more than Derrick. Obviously, he's younger, but the two guys combined got like $35 million guaranteed. It's pretty crazy. I mean, they've easily been two of the better players in the National Football League, any position, including quarterback. And in these physical games, like when you muck it up, and if you're a playoff contender, you are going to play in some games against really good defenses. You just have a horse you can hand it to, because that guy then makes the life easier on the quarterback. Because what happens tonight? Lamar doesn't have to throw it as much. What did they do tonight? They had 36 rushing attempts and 22 passing attempts. And last week when they lost, was two when they lose the Steelers? 2 weeks ago, it was the stat came out that he was 2-4 when they have more passing attempts when Lamar does than the team does rushing attempts. This is their strategy. Now, you might get into a game where the number's close to equal or maybe more passing attempts. If Lamar plays like he did tonight, completely under control, they'd be fine. They'd be fine. I still have question marks about their defense, because when we're headed to the fourth quarter and 17-16, I'm Googling. I'm like, the Ravens defensive staff in 2020, when Wink Martindale was the defensive coordinator, their DB coach was Jesse Minter, who is going to interview with countless teams this offseason for a head coaching job. Will he get one or not? I don't know. He might be a year away, but he's going to interview this year. And Mike Macdonald, who last year, when he was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, people on the staff called him boy genius. He's now coaching Seattle, who has a lead in the NFC West. And I think they might win it. If I was a betting man right now, I'd probably bet on Seattle to win the NFC West. So they had Minter and him as two position coaches. And this is the thing with the Harbaugh brothers. Like, neither guy is calling plays. John Harbaugh is not the defensive coordinator, not the offensive coordinator. Obviously, Jim is just the CEO, leader of men. They are elite at hiring coaches. They really are. They are so damn good at that. And it's not shocking when you watch tonight, you're like, God, these teams are so well coached. They're just playing so hard. They tackle so well. I mean, it was the first game that the Ravens have tackled well in the backfield in a while. They just feel like just a high-level operation. And one skill, I don't know if Jack taught them this, they are really, really good at identifying coaches. And obviously, John has the Ravens organization, which has produced coaches for a long, long time. I mean, going back before John even got there with Brian Billick, like a lot of high-level coaches have started off as position coaches there, gone on to be defensive coordinators. It's been a breeding ground for defensive coaches that start coaching linebackers, defensive line, or DBs, and shoot right up the chain and become head coaches. All the way back to, Rex Ryan way back in the day, or Mike Nolan. I mean, you can go back to the early 2000s, but, they're doing it again. I mean, Minter was John Harbaugh's guy. Mike Macdonald was John Harbaugh's guy. Even Orr this year is taking a lot of shit, which I do understand, because their defense was so freaking good last year. I mean, it's easily one of the better defenses of like the last 20 years. Not even just statistically where they rank scoring defense, but when you just watch them play. It's why I was on a couple text chains tonight, and it's like, was last year their chance to win it all? Because their defense was clearly better. But again, it all comes down, if a Lamar can play at a high level, this team could beat anybody. And we saw them curb stomp the Bills. And this week, I'm fascinated to watch them play the Eagles, where when you look at the Chargers, I think that whoever they match up against in round one is going to be very interesting. We'll have to see who wins this division now in the North, because there's a very good chance that if the Chargers are the 6th seed, they play the 3 seed that is the AFC North champion. Now, it looked like Pittsburgh, after they beat Baltimore, was going to head to that pretty easily. Then all of a sudden, Thursday night happened. And then the Ravens win the night, and you're like right there. And if the Ravens were to beat Philly, then they go on a bye. They would be 9-4. And the Steelers' next 2 games are at Cincinnati, which is no easy test the way their offense is playing. And then Cleveland, which we see how difficult these divisional games are. So, and then they have to play Philly. So before the Ravens play Pittsburgh. So they have 3 games to the Ravens 2, which is the Eagles and the Giants. And if the Chargers play the Ravens in the first round as the 3-6, I would imagine the Chargers are one and done. I would like the Ravens in that matchup. If it's vice versa and the Ravens are the 5 seed and they're playing the Texans, I think a lot of people would bet on the Ravens to win that game. And it's Chargers playing the Steelers, like that's a very, very winnable game. And I think there would be a lot of money coming in on the Chargers if it was like +4, right? Or +3.5. And who knows? Maybe it'd be even a little lower than that. Maybe it'd be under a field goal. But like they would need a matchup like that where it's like, hey, we're both going to try to play in the teens and just see who can make the play in the fourth quarter. We're kind of mirror images of each other. And listen, I would say Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin would be a cancel each other out, and I would take Justin Herbert over Russell Wilson every day of the week and 50 times on a Sunday. And that's not a shot at Russell Wilson, but in 2024, I think there's not a general manager or head coach in the NFL that would disagree with me, and that would also include everyone involved with the Steelers. But I think the Chargers are going to be very matchup dependent. Like they're going to play, they're going to be very comfortable actually in their divisional games when they play Denver, not counting the Raiders, who are basically a JV football team right now, but counting Denver and the Chiefs, who all kind of play the same way. Really good defense, ugly offense, just execute down the stretch and try to win by like, 5 to 7 points. And like they play tonight, it was they were just trying so hard to keep it close, and they just couldn't because their number one wide receiver, who's probably going to be a really good player, is Lad McConkey. And one thing, big picture, this team's going to need to do, because defense is not going to be an issue. It never is with Jim Harbaugh. Running the ball is not going to be an issue. It never is with Jim Harbaugh. They're going to have to add a good tight end and a wide receiver. Because you saw Quentin Johnson, it's not their draft pick, that Telesco took last year in the first round, who looked like he was showing signs of life this season. I think he has 5 touchdowns, maybe 6 coming into this game. Was an utter disaster tonight. He dropped a massive first down when the game was actually still in the balance. Lamar had just scored to make it a 23-16 game, and the Chargers were driving, and they just ran this crossing route. And whatever defense the Ravens were running, I mean, like a lot of times this year, there was no one really around him. And as Aikman said, if he catches that, there was a lot of green turf. Now, I don't know if he scores, but it definitely is an explosive play because the guy can run. And who knows? The Chargers are down 6, and maybe the game turns out differently. Instead, goes right through his hands. And that was kind of, I thought, the moment the game flipped a little bit. And then the Chargers ran out of air because they don't have the margin for error because they don't have Zay Flowers and Bateman and Mark Andrews. Like, they're just not. And once J.K. Dobbins goes out, their offense just does not feel explosive. It's Herbert just kind of scrambling around, getting chased by Ravens, throwing it to Palmer. I mean, McConkey. That's what their limitations are. And I think that's going to be a big point of emphasis this offseason. Not that they have to break the bank and buy some wide receiver, because I don't expect them to like figure out a way to pay T. Higgins. Jim Harbaugh has shown that is not the position that he emphasized. I do wonder, though, he has never had a quarterback like this. And his defense is going to be good, but you have to have more offensive firepower, especially in a conference when you view your guy as every bit as good as these other guys, or at least talented enough to go toe to toe. Well, they're going to have weapons. Like moving forward, this is the worst the Chiefs offense is ever going to be personnel wise. Google some of the guys Andy Reid has had over the years. Like he gets aggressive on offense. Obviously the Bills, they trade for Amari Cooper. They got Keon Coleman. Shakir's not going anywhere. They got Cook. Like their offense is going to be good. The Bengals, their offense is good. The Ravens, not going anywhere. The Broncos are probably only going to add on offense. So I know it's not Harbaugh's first maneuver and the first thing he wants to do. I do think they're going to have to find some balance because this team is going to be in position these next couple of years to be very, very competitive. And the difference is going to be if you're struggling to score 15 points in these playoff games, you're not going to be able to win. So I really enjoyed the game tonight. I like an old school, physical guys just getting blasted. We don't get that enough. And that's part of like when you watch certain teams like the Chargers or the Chiefs, you just get those versions of football games. So congrats to the Ravens. That's a big road win. And cool moment for John that he can call Jack and Jackie Harbaugh and celebrate with them. All right, boys. If you're looking to level up your wardrobe, we all are. I've got some killer pieces from TravisMathew that'll have you covered for any occasion. And right now, you can get 20% off your first order at travismatthew.com. Let's dive in. First up, the home game polo from the Reggie Bush collection by TravisMathew. Yeah, that Reggie Bush. USC, the NFL. This polo's got a little contrast collar, sleeve piping, look at these guns, and a scooped hemline, giving you the modern elevated vibe. So whether you're having cocktails at the clubhouse, whether you're on a date night, or whether you're just chilling at the pad, it's a win all around. Next, check out my personal favorite, the side slip hoodie, also from the Reggie Bush collection. It's got an external kangaroo pocket, scooper hemline, and comes in multiple colors. I'm rocking the black one. Don't sleep on Reggie, because he picked these designs for their performance and style. And I can feel it. How about this? For those days when comfort is key, the Cloud Flannel button-up is a game changer. Made from cotton with a touch of spandex. It's the holidays. We might be eating a little much. We need to be able to stretch it out, and this thing does. But it's the most comfortable flannel that I've ever worn. Perfect for all-day wear, and obviously a killer look. And for the ultimate comfort, the Cloud Crew tee from the Cloud Collection, baby. It's so soft, it might just become your new favorite tee. I know for me it has. Seriously, this thing is next level. Don't miss out. Head to travismatthew.com. Grab 20% off your first order and elevate your fit. Trust me, you won't regret it. Go to travismatthew.com. A couple other quick topics around the National Football League. The Jets hired the 33rd team, which is owned by Mike Tannenbaum, who I personally know because when I got out of football, he got out of football, he started to become an agent and representing coaches and media people. And someone put me in touch with him, and he represented me for some radio contracts. Not that I really needed it. It was honestly kind of stupid on my part, but I just got to know him. And, you know, he always, he loves the business of football. Obviously stayed very close to it, working at ESPN. And he clearly likes Woody Johnson a lot, and Woody Johnson thinks highly of him and Rick Spielman. Here's my one question, though. If I'm Woody Johnson and my job is basically just to own the team, wouldn't I constantly, especially this year, when I came into the year with I have a general manager on a expiring contract. I think Douglas's contract, I don't know the exact date, but whether it went through the draft, they weren't going to extend him. And a coach that clearly Woody didn't like. Wouldn't I be making some phone calls, just in the summer, or having someone do that and just put together a list of here are the top 5 or 6 guys I should interview for general manager and the top 5 or 6 guys I should interview for head coaching jobs? It doesn't feel like it should be that difficult. It really doesn't. I often think this about athletic directors. If I'm the athletic director at school X that's Power 4, right? Whether it's Texas or whether it's, pick a smaller version of that, Texas Tech. Isn't part of my job to be dialed in on people I would want to interview if I have to fire my coach or my coach leaves? So, I don't quite understand not feeling good about, who I'm going after. Or at least have a list of people on both sides of the ledger, coach and executive, that I want to talk to. And if I'm so out of the loop because I'm just this super rich guy that's not paying that much attention beside to my team, okay, somewhat understandable. Well, we read that article from Diana Rossini that when he had the meeting trying to bench Aaron Rodgers, there were 17 people in the meeting room, and 4 or 5 of them were his cronies. What are they on the payroll for? They can't just be selling season tickets 24/7, 365. Wouldn't I have a right-hand guy that I would give that responsibility to? So, props to Tannenbaum and Spielman for getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm sure, to be part of this consulting operation. But I think it's more reflection on the Jets. Shouldn't they be able to figure out the right guys to be all? It's not like a cloak and dagger situation where you're just in the dark. Like, what do I do? It's pretty fucking clear, especially from a coaching standpoint. But honestly, even the general manager standpoints, like, who are some of the best teams? The Ravens, the Eagles. Like, when they hired Joe Douglas, pretty self-explanatory. He was the number one guy or the right-hand guy to Howie on one of the best teams in the league. Usually what happens? It's not often where you're like, well, let's go to the bottom three teams and let's interview their assistant GMs. Like, the same guys get interviewed coming from successful operations. So that one's a little bit of a head scratcher to me. I don't pretend to be in the know enough because we've seen the Bears have done this before. People love hiring consultants to help them out with their search. Well, they're really just going to funnel them guys that they like. Like, isn't it your job to hire the guy that you like? Listen, Josh Harris last year, what does he do? He's hired Bob Myers, but like Bob still hangs out with him. Bob didn't have a job. Bob's not like a consultant. It's like, hey, Bob, you just know people. Can you help me run a search? Like, you just come work for us. Not like consult. Like, I want you to be part of this operation. I want to lean on you. And clearly does, because I think, was the Eagle game on Thursday night? Bob was sitting right there with Josh Harris. So I don't know. And speaking of coaches, it's really funny that it's never easy firing people if you like them, right? You read about headlines, major Fortune 500 companies. If you work in certain industries, you get texts about so-and-so has been laid off, and you know them. It's a shitty feeling when you see someone lose their job. And anyone listening to this, whether you own a company or whether you're in a management or HR position, it's not a fun position to be in when you have to tell someone they're being let go. It's bad. And clearly the Bears have a lot. Now, some industries are a little different than others. Like, if you work in coaching, you're kind of hired to essentially be fired. I mean, Andy Reid and Bill Belichick have been fired. So Matt Eberflus shouldn't lose that much sleep knowing that he's going to get fired sooner or later. But clearly the Bears like the guy, which, understand it. I bet he's a really nice guy. For Matt Eberflus to still have a job, and obviously you can't fire him this week because it's a Thursday night game. Probably should have fired him when you fired Shane Waldron. Wasn't that the move? Like, what's the point of delaying this? Because here's the thing I will respect about the Jets, who the story came that Woody Johnson helicoptered to practice and fired Joe Douglas like last Tuesday. Once you fire everybody, you don't have to hide anything, right? The Bears are writing these lists, Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren in their office when no one's looking. They kind of look around, they kind of dim the lights, and they're writing like Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel. They got a little list or something in their notepad. When you just tell him, hey, man, we appreciate everything you did. You tried hard. It just wasn't good enough. It just wasn't even remotely close to good enough. I saw a clip. I didn't have the game audio on, but he threw a challenge flag yesterday on a Jordan Addison explosive play that obviously wasn't a play that should have been challenged. And they asked him after the game, like, why did you do that? He's like, we just like challenging explosive plays. And I had to look twice. I'm like, is this AI? Did he really just say this? I mean, this guy's so over his head. And this is where you get in these positions where someone's completely over their head in a situation or in a job like this, where it's like, we all start getting embarrassed. Like, this starts getting really, really bad. I mean, really, really ugly. The coaching going on right now for the Bears, like, sorry, Chicago fans, I could have told you Richard Hightower was the special teams coach for the 49ers for a while. We used to have a thing where we just scream out Hightower every time there is a fuck up. And usually it's multiple times a game. Well, obviously in the game against the Vikings, you had a muff punt where a guy basically called, get away, Peter, get away. And he just kind of stood there and the ball hit him and the Vikings landed on it. You don't see that very often. And they had the same thing happen to them on a block kick that literally just happened to them that cost them a game the week before. So you can't even. I just don't get what's going on, and I feel bad for Bears fans because I don't know if it's gonna happen. You know what's funny is like to be a football coach for the most part, you got to be a tough, crazy guy, right? Like let's use Antonio Pierce for an example. Like no one can argue like Antonio Pierce is legitimately tough. We have seen him play middle linebacker in the National Football League. He's a tough guy. Like if you just compare like who is physically tougher, Antonio Pierce or William Belichick, you'd go, well, Bill would get his ass kicked by Antonio Pierce. Complete agreement by everybody. Yet Antonio Pierce coaches like he is terrified of doing anything wrong. He's constantly kicking field goals. He's running out clocks. He's an embarrassment when it comes to making decisions. And Belichick, historically, has some of the biggest cojones, the biggest set of balls in NFL history. So having balls when you're a coach has nothing to do with like how tough of an actual guy you are, right? Dan Campbell has pretty big balls. Sometimes he's a little reckless, but no one ever argues like Dan Campbell does not coach scared. John Harbaugh forever was always like, this guy's crazy. Say this about Sirianni. Now, is Sirianni actually making decisions? I think he's being told to make these decisions, but either way. And Dan Quinn, who, when you just watch his teams the last several years on defense, you go, this guy can instill toughness. Like he's crazy little bald guy, backwards hat, and his team's flying around with their hair on fire. I don't think it quite hit me because one, I screwed up. I turned the television off the game because I assumed it was over before Jaden Daniels hit Terry McLaurin for, I would say, probably if you were watching it live, one of the coolest plays. And then I also missed live the field goal that was missed, which watching it not live honestly is such a letdown because you know you missed that high that everyone got to experience, and it still pisses me off more than 24 hours later. God, I'm an idiot. I clicked off the 4 box to go to the individual box to the freaking Bears game because it was headed to overtime. But regardless, when they scored the touchdown with Terry McLaurin to go down 27-26, they had 21 seconds left. And it didn't quite hit me. I guess we might have talked about it last night before we recorded my podcast at night. Why didn't he go for 2? And he talked about it after the game or today when he was addressing the media that never crossed his mind to go for 2. His field goal kicker has been a disaster. His quarterback, like Lamar tonight, like if you get him on the run on these 2-point plays, is very, very dangerous. Hell, they had scored on one earlier. You also have nothing to lose. Like this year, you have no expectations. Winning 10 games might get you like a contract extension. So this guy that just a couple weeks ago on Thursday night against the Eagles, what was the score? 12-10, and he was driving, went for it. You know why? Because there wasn't that much pressure. Late in the, 10 minutes left or whatever in the fourth quarter. I forget the exact time on the clock, but if you lost to the Eagles, no one holds it against you. It's easy to be free and easy. It actually doesn't take balls. You could argue it's just stupid to make that decision against the Eagles because you actually have a chance to win. Where the Cowboys, where there is pressure, because if you do lose to the Cowboys, everyone's going to say you choked because you should have beat them. You're favored. They're terrible. They got their backup quarterback. He puckered up. And that's what I find funny about some of these coaches. It's like they get loose when it's easy to be loose. It was easy to be loose against the Eagles. They were a massive underdog. Yet against the Cowboys, in a game that everyone thought they were going to win, he wasn't loose. And he wasn't this kind of gunslinging guy with big balls. And he coached, I would say, I don't want to say scared, but he took the easy way out. And it cost him because it actually wasn't because the kicker is so terrible and the ball never even had a chance. So I think Dan Quinn would have to want that one back. Okay, let's do, to me, the penthouse when it comes to the NFL and the top teams. I think the NFC right now, if the Eagles or the Lions, if the Super Bowl was tomorrow, and I said you could pick between 4 or 5 teams in the AFC: the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Texans. Basically, the group of teams that are going to make the playoffs. The Lions and the Eagles would be favored against all those teams. Depending on the matchup, the Lions would be heavy favorite. And I think the way the Eagles are playing right now, I think the same thing. Where last year, going into even the Final Four, you're like, the Ravens are going to be favored against whoever they play. And the Chiefs are going to be an underdog to either the Lions or the 49ers. So to me, Philly, I haven't been hesitant to put them on the Lions level, but there is no denying right now that they look fucking awesome. The Lions have been good going back to last year. They have been consistently awesome. They have won every single way. There's nothing else to say about them. I think if you were doing a power ranking of 1 through 5, they would have to be the number 1 team in the NFL right now. I think if we're just being real, I think you'd probably have to put the Eagles number 2. Because like I said, I think they would be favored against all those teams in New Orleans if the game was next week. And then I think the AFC, I don't feel great about the conference. One, I think it's wide open. 4 teams could win this thing, maybe 5, right? Obviously, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens. If the Steelers, I thought maybe, and then you watch the other night against the Browns, I don't know. I thought the Chargers, it's like, is it crazy that the Chargers could be in the AFC Championship game? And then you watch them play, you're like, they just don't have enough offense. You'd be hard-pressed to see a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix get that far, but their defense is really good. It might just be the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. And I know the Steelers beat the Ravens. We'll see if they play again. And hell, they might end up playing 3 times. I just have a hard time picking Russell Wilson over Lamar. Though, the one thing Steeler fans would say, if you're going to play him like you do every time, he's going to look like that, then yeah. Then I would kick the Ravens out of this category. But every time I want to drop him, I watch a game like tonight, and you're like, holy shit. This is awesome. But I think we have to do a clear separation of the Lions and the Eagles right now are just kind of in their own little category. And to me, they feel better than all these teams right now in the AFC. And luckily, we get a massive, awesome game this week in Baltimore with the Eagles coming through. I think the Outhouse just has 1 team. And like I said, the port-a-potty Panthers, who it was really ugly there for a while, might have done one of the great moves of all time of benching their player, and then basically nothing they did to create this. Andy Dalton gets in a car accident, and they have to throw Bryce Young back in, and he looks good. And the team, I don't know if they've rallied around him. I don't know if they've just gotten better. They have been really good for a month. And they went toe-to-toe to drive down the field and score that extra 2-point to tie the game against the Chiefs. That was a really cool moment for a Carolina Panthers franchise that has had a lot of ugly moments. And it was just a couple weeks ago, they were the laughingstock of the league. And to me right now, that's the Giants, who are in their own little world. Like, the Raiders are equally as shitty on the field, but they're just losing quarterback. They just had no quarterbacks coming into the season. Now, Gardner Minshew breaks his collarbone. Aiden O'Connell had shattered a finger. They had to sign, what's his name from the Falcons last year, Ritter. Like, their quarterback situation is so bad that they were always going to suck. But they really didn't have any options. Like, I don't quite know what to say. The Giants chose to name Tommy Cutlets their starting quarterback. Like, I texted with someone who's around the Giants today, not a coach or anything, but covers on the media side. And I was like, are these guys really going to get fired? He's like, I just don't see how you overcome if they just don't win another game. And then sometimes when it rains, it pours. It's like you can't really hide, right? You're like, God, that Tommy Cutlets thing, that was really bad. Who do we got this week? Well, you play in 4 days on Thanksgiving Day on basically the slot they give the Cowboys to. Why? Because that's the slot most people are watching football. It is typically the highest rated game of the day, the middle game, because a lot of people on the East Coast sitting down to eat. A lot of us on the West Coast or Mountain Time are cooking and are around the kitchen. And that game is on television. A couple years ago, I forget who played, but it was a really good game. It was like one of the highest rated games of the year. Might have been 2 years ago. It was Cowboy somebody, and I think like almost 30 million people watched it. Now, I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case this year because it's not a great game, but just on the sheer volume of people that sit around during that time, everyone's going to be watching. And if you get killed, like, listen, getting your ass kicked by Tampa sucked. If you are a Giants fan, if you work for that team, but it was a Sunday morning game. And unless you lived in New York, it's not like nationally everyone saw it. There is no hiding in this game. And because you're playing Dallas, everyone knows we've all been making fun of Dallas all year. And they're rolling out Cooper Rush. And I like Dallas a lot this weekend or week, on Thursday. So I think the Giants, like, even look at the Titans, like, keep playing their ass off. The Raiders, like I said, they just suck and they're awful. And they're also in this category. But once you do the Tommy Cutlets move for Drew Lock, and your own team basically goes, how can this be happening? I think you go into your own category. You basically have become the port-a-potty Panthers. That's the New York Giants. The port-a-potty New York Giants. That's currently who they are, with a Tommy Cutlet at the bottom, on one of a bunch of toilet paper and just a Tommy Cutlet right there on top. That's the New York Giants headed into Thanksgiving week.